welcome. Thank you so much for being at S2 on air. So just at the beginning, I'm going to just start off with a land acknowledgement and then pass it off to Tyler to talk just briefly about our new COVID response prompt. I know people are probably going to be trickling in a little bit, so I'll give us a moment. Hello, welcome. I'll give us a moment before I post stuff. Great. So at the beginning of each of our events, we do a little land acknowledgement each time in connection with a particular group that we want to highlight. Today, it's the Liberation Medicine School. And I'm just going to read from their website. It says, the Liberation Medicine School aims to build a school and a place of healing that A, centers the indigenous knowledge and narratives of the Black community, B, engages healers and medical practitioners in undoing pathologic systems of power that undermine the health of Black folks, C, celebrates the central role of Black, trans, and gender nonconforming people in anchoring Afro-Indigenous medicine. Ultimately, Liberation Medicine seeks to embody a humane medical system that supports Black autonomy, healing, humanity, and right to thrive. So these guys are amazing. I'm going to pop in their link into our chat. As well as their donation page. So as part of the land acknowledgement today, because we are on, and if people are coming from different places, feel free, there'll be a moment to acknowledge the lands that you are currently on as well, whatever your relationship to them. I want to speak just briefly that Indigenous folks, especially in Seattle, are enormously at risk of police violence as well. And that is something that we put on the forefront of our minds and the forefront of our work as we try to make this community more resilient, because parts of our community that are over-policed are suffering and are not able to heal and do the work that they need to do to have a resilient and thriving community, both within their own sovereignty and within the sort of intersectional and the interconnected, reality of being in a city. So yeah, thank you so much. Please go ahead and look at Liberation Medicine if you would be so willing. Pop over there and send them some of your money. They're doing incredibly connected and individual work, which I think we're all learning that's like the best place to send funds right now. Is right to individuals, right directly to community leaders and organizers. Great. Okay, thank you. The next little thing I'm going to send in, and then I'm going to pass it over to Tyler, is our S2 on air survey. So for every S2 on air, we do part of our participatory research is we just have all of our participants fill out a survey that has to do with something that we're talking about right now, that has to do either very directly with what we're going to be speaking on, or something that kind of connects it to our work in Seattle and our study of resilience here. So that is also in the chat. Tyler, just briefly, I can just pop over to you to speak on our new prompt that is going on for our resilience project.
Yeah, thanks for that, Una. Yeah, so speaking of resilience, we are actually developing essentially a participatory data set that sort of enacts like a hyper-local census data and sort of resource agglomeration that can help address some of the challenges that we've been facing during this pandemic, and sort of through any sort of disaster-prone sort of society and social barriers that we're currently enduring. And so essentially we have our prompt this week that aligns with the conversation that we're going to have today, which is on social infrastructures. So that can range from educational services that are both publicly and privately accessible to healthcare or things like that. And so we're sort of asking our community if they know of any sort of resources that they've found very valuable in terms of social infrastructures that can help guide us and sort of our neighbors on creating a more resilient space. So I don't want to spend too long on that, but all the conversation that we have throughout the week sort of align with these projects, and all this information and data will help build an ecosystem resilience map that can be used as a resource for people across the board.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll stick that one in the chat too. Just wanted to say thank you so much all for being here. So excited to have you, Valeria. It's going to be so fun to speak with you about your work. I just wanted to open it up very briefly if anyone wanted to speak to the land that they are on at the moment before we get started. Awesome. Okay. And feel free to speak up. Yeah.
I didn't hit the thing quick enough.
Go for it.
I just want to mention that, you've already acknowledged kind of the Coast Salish region, but I just wanted to add from my experience and just bring up the heightened conversations that we've been having with the, oh my gosh, what's the organized protest in Capitol Hill, also called the Autonomous Zone, also called the Occupied Protest. And I was just reading this morning that there was a renaming of that space. It's kind of an iterative liminal space right now, but there was a renaming of it because there was acknowledgement of this area as occupied land already. And so just the conversation that's been happening there about the potential and possibility for, as we have these intersectional conversations about addressing policing, addressing systemic violence, addressing disaster moments, community disasters, social disasters, environmental disasters, infrastructural disasters, and those kind of being places of opportunity to address past events and reinvent how we are for the future. And the conversation that's been happening here specifically around our relationship to Indigenous land and occupied Coast Salish territory. So that's come up for me.
Thank you, Em. Okay, great. Well, I want to pass it off both either to Em or to Valeria, whichever of you would like to begin.
I'll jump in. Is that okay? Great. So I just wanted to give a little introduction about how we came to having this conversation today. I first met Valeria at Seattle Design Week. Was it 2 years ago now?
Yes.
2 years ago, yeah. Where Valeria was demonstrating a site-based piece that was drawing these spatial relationships between sites in Seattle, we were in Pioneer Square, and key cultural sites in Mexico City, using these small computers and this audio capture on the sites. And I just thought it was an incredible installation. We just kind of connected. I started following her work more and more. And then when I happened to be in Mexico City, gosh, that was a year ago. Oh,
Yes.
We reconnected and Valeria started to share more about her work with design and technology to address complex social issues. And I was especially interested in kind of like the evolution of her work, her background in computers, computer technology, and industrial design, like product and material design, and how that has like shifted, or she's been able to use like foundational thoughts and knowledge from that to look at systems of violence and complex social issues within Mexico City. And that had just been coming up for me a lot in the conversations that we've been having around systemic violence and policing and anti-racist movements. So, Tyler named our work in disaster-prone responses. So we've been talking a lot at Sustainable Seattle about disaster resiliency in general, but also naming the pandemic as a disaster, policing as a disaster, femicide as a disaster. So we're here today to explore kind of transferable solutions to these issues rooted in Valeria's work. So she is a master's candidate in product design and development at UAM, Oh my gosh, you have to help me with the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Azcapotzalco.
Azcapotzalco, yes.
Nailed it. I will visit there one day. She has studies in industrial design and electronics for arts and design. She's been a Global Goals Jams coordinator and facilitator for 3 years, and she received the Mexican Design Award, Diseña Mexico, in 2019 in hardware design for mobile devices. And she also takes photos of plants and resistance on her walks in the city, which is super cool. Can I do this quickly enough? I think I found one of these photos and I wanna share it.
Yes.
Because I think these are so cool. Can you see my screen? Is this one of these?
Yes.
Plants and resistance, which I just love. I think that's amazing. So yeah, I want to pass it over, Valeria, to you to talk a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here virtually. And well, I'm an industrial designer, as you say. And now I'm working in what we can do for complex problems through design. Because we are really, as industrial designer, we are focused more in the objects. But now in my interest is to pass this focus on the people, design for the people. So I would like to talk about of my last project that that was my final project from the bachelor, and where everything starts there. So I designed a panic button as a jewelry in order to create some response or create an agency on the society to trigger these care practices in the community. Like it's a panic button that you are in a danger zone or you are suffering this sexual harassment thing, and you just click the button and it connects to another user that has this jewelry and can go to watch your bags and give you help in this situation. But when I did this thing, the IoT and the wearables were like this big trend, and I found this insight that no matter how many electronic devices we can design, if the people are not really connected or really committed to help each other, or the trust in this community are not really strong, it will fail. Any electronic device, it would fail, or sensors. There is no reason to design that. So now in my master project, I'm focused in how we can design for trust, which was one thing that we saw in the Seattle Design Festival. And I think that in this situation that we are, like with the pandemic thing, with the police oppression, in order to get organized as a community, we need to like knit this network between each other and know each other issues and go for that, and in a fierce togetherness, right? So that's for now my project. And I don't know if I can talk about more like what I'm doing now.
Yeah, we have a couple kind of questions we can go back and forth in conversation.
Okay.
And I want to invite anybody who's listening in too, if you have specific questions that come up, there's things that really stand out to you that you want to hear more about, please just pop it in the chat box. Una and I will go back and forth with questions and we'll highlight your questions. Then if you want to expound on those more, we'll pass the mic to you. But I'd love to know, yeah, I want to hear more about the projects that you're doing, but I'd also just like to know a little bit more about the specific issue that you're dealing with or the complex problems that are coming up for you the most in your work.
Well, I'm designing for trust against this gender violence problem that we have in Mexico. It's a really hard problem that we have because when I started this research, the numbers was like 7 women per day died in Mexico. Now is 9 women die in Mexico per day. So all the numbers are just like increases. And I think that it's something that as a woman, I have to act from my practice. And as a member of a community, I think that I will get really, I don't know, like mad or crazy if my friends or my college students or my university students get into something like that. And also we have this issue that we don't trust in the police or in the government. It's a really, it's something that one of the insights that I got in my research, and it's very obvious. Some of you will know about that, with these old problems with the government and the narco, and these things about las muertas de Juárez murder. And I think that we can't just close our eyes to that social complex problems. We have to act, and how we can get this agency as citizens, as human beings, is one of my my questions through design.
Thank you so much.
That was a really good, how we get agency as citizens through design.
Yes.
Horrible question.
That's it kind of leads me to one of my next questions. I love this. So I am my background is in, I do technical theater, so I'm not a designer, but I work with designers. And something I've been thinking about is like, when you go through the process of design yourself, especially industrial design or design that was less focused on social issues, like how connected does that process feel to social issues? Like when you're maybe collaborating on a project that isn't specifically for social issues, how connected does it feel in the room, like in the collaboration room? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, or disconnected. How disconnected does it feel? Because maybe, yeah.
Well, it's like I think that for design for something, it's like I really like to do that thing in a collaborative way, and in order to understand or to get in the same stage of communication. So sometimes I know that every person is a different world and has different thoughts or a mind, and it's not like go to them to the group as to impose your thoughts, but you have to create this environment of everybody can share their ideas. And I think it's the best kind of mixology to get the best idea of design with all the perspectives.
Have you ever had trouble in the collaboration, like in a collaboration, trying to talk more about social issues or trying to move the conversation towards social issues?
Yes, there are some people more focused on this like commercial thing of the design, like create something just to sell all the objects, for example. But I think that something that I tell them is that nowadays we have to really be aware of that, of our choices, because our choices will impact the future or the society. So we enter in that conversation, and I think you have to be open and to be vulnerable in order to comprehend their thoughts or their reasons of why they are thinking in that way. And we create this exchange of ideas in order to get in the same stage. But yes, it's very common.
That makes sense to me. I think I've probably many of us have run into that situation, but it sounds like you have a good grasp on how you like to enter into these collaborations, which I'm sure helps when you're talking about social issues, is to look at those collaborations as a moment to practice that.
Yes.
Do you have, I would love to hear more about your project specifically. Also, if you have a specific question, I'll toss it back to you too, if you like.
Yeah, I actually kind of wanted to go back a little bit to this piece about trust, and just as you've been talking about collaboration, I was still kind of processing this idea of agency. I'm wondering, we talk a lot about community resilience and kind of trying to identify, like, what does resilience really look like? And I'm wondering if there's, you use the word agency, is that synonymous with resilience? So are we talking about the same things when we talk about community agency and community resilience? And I just wanted to bring back this, the title of this session is specifically about saving lives, which I think is really important. That the stakes of this work are incredibly high, and the role that the deterioration of trust in what should be resources that support resilience, like police and like government, that directly threatens lives and livelihoods, as we're seeing as a pattern, as we're seeing with femicide in Mexico and other, issues like you brought up, like the, real presenting conversation here about police brutality. And so I'm curious about some of the themes that you're starting to identify that are kind of alternatives to these tensions between police and community that start to build this agency or start to build this sense of resilience.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, it was kind of a few thoughts at once, so thanks for tracking me on that.
Right. Well, in the case of agency, I understand the agency like an act, like the participation of the citizens. And yes, I think that agency is part of this strategy of our resilience way to organize as a community. And it's something that in my context, we have fear about the force of the police, but I have seen in the social media that people are really getting into it and like really do their participation first in social media and then in the movements that are like pursuing the like demand justice in our city. And it was really incredible when some police when it did some sexual harassment to a girl in Azcapotzalco, and all the girls in the city go to the door of the palace in Mexico and demand for a justice. And you can feel this in this energy in your body that make you erase in some way the fear that you feel in Mexico.
Luna, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think I'm really curious about your work and how that feeling of like resistance and trust has become part of your creative process, and how you have like, because of your design background, I think you see these problems or opportunities for designers, right? Like it's a chance to solve a problem. And what do you think your design background gives you when you look at something like protests like this? What kind of ideas come up for you as far as design goes?
Well, I think that it's a process where you deconstruct yourself and the levels that the society has put you in as a woman. And you are in this process, like with these emerging ideas of, oh, this is bad, or I do these things or these patterns, and I have to change that. And in design, how we change these patterns, like how we do these little shifts in our relationships, not just in the objects or in the interfaces, but directly in the relationships of the people. And also what I really saw in these protests are the symbolic things that are really meaningful for the people, because I think are really powerful when you are when you want to organize the people. It's something that gets you to identify as a community. So, for example, I have a friend that is a great photographer, and I will show you. I have this one. And this kind of photos of the girl with the power in their hand are like a really empowered woman around us. So I like to see that things and all the words that the girls shout out in the protests. It's really encouraged the agency of the citizens.
Did they do for this protest? Did they do the Chilean song "Violador Eres Tú"?
Like what?
Talking about? I think it's called "Un en tu camino." Sorry, I look for it. It's like a song that came from Chile, and like people have been singing it all over the world. It's like "A violador eres tú."
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one time in the Zócalo, in the center of the Mexico City, where all the girls went to sing that song, and it was really powerful. It really moved you. Yeah.
Have you seen these kind of like collective actions, or these things where like all these voices come together with, like you're saying, like these powerful images, these powerful words, things like this, where I'll share it in the comments if people aren't familiar, but this is a song that emerged a couple months ago, in November, I think, and like spread all over the world. Have you seen that tie with kind of like examples of agency or things that start to shift in a community?
Yes, I think those things or signs or the symbolic objects or like songs are replicated in the girls, like in their daily lives. For example, I saw a lot of girls in the metro station with the green like, I don't know how to say it, but it's for abortion. The green one, a handkerchief, I think. So and I think that using that handkerchief, it really empowered the girls in the streets. Like like go out. I'm going to this way, even if some men are like staring me, or if you have a problem in the subway, like of sexual harassment, you see these girls, and you can get close to them and say, hey, so, some guy is near to me, help me, right? And the people are starting to get this agency, little steps in order to really make a change, like in this society.
I want to ask too, bringing it back a little bit more technically to your work. We've been doing a focus over the last couple months on community and data and the role that data can play in this kind of work. Can you speak a little bit to any ways that you've used data in your research or the way that it's informed the projects that you're working on?
Yes, I think that data is, how to say it, there are different types of data. The data that the government give us to us, and also are the data that you can get from these collective groups. Like, for example, you can go to a protest and you hear what's happening in another state, for example, and the government or the newspapers aren't talking about that. So I think that the best data are the collective ones, that the citizens are making, that not something that the government put it as a layer. And what I have been research is how to map, how to do collective mapping with free softwares in the internet. So in order to really have a big perspective of the problem in certain area of the city, right? Because it's different. It's different from the center of the city or than the peripheria, that board of the another state. So it's really different from what you hear, what you see in the social media, for example, than what the newspapers are publishing, right?
Go for it, Una.
I was wondering if you have any favorite examples of collective mapping of a project that you've seen, or even something that sort of collectively happened, even if it's not like a design project specifically. But if you have like any favorite things that come to mind, especially that empower citizens or empower the collective.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Well, there's a girl named Maria Salguero who made this collective, well, this femicide map, and he was like searching these newspapers that where are these deaths, and asking to the people around them, and put that information in a map, and the people compare the map with the like the data of the government. That doesn't really match. And the other one, I think, is some girl of a university made this map about where metro stations were more like sexual harassment. Yes, these kind of things. And a lot of girls in Facebook start to say, yeah, in Metro CEU, yes, in Metro El Zócalo, or something like that. So them then they started to put the map, and all the people saw that the area near to the University of UNAM was a very dangerous zone where a lot of young girls were like suffering these kind of things. Also, in my project, I am doing this kind of thing called Jaquelarre. That is a thing like, it's a mix. Well, in English, it's more like coven for hack the reality that you are living. So there, the girls start to mapping how they feel in some areas near to the college, and we are like start to be aware of these areas that are really problematic, or start to map not just sexual harassment, but map how the people are feeling about these kind of things, because we just have this tendency to talk about these problems like something linear that happens just in the present, and just the sexual assault, the sexual harassment just passed, but we are not talking about how we are feeling and how we deal with these things in the specific areas. For example, it's different how a girl experienced a sexual assault living in Ecatepec than someone that is having this experience in the Metrobus, that is a public transport. So it's interesting how to see different kind of data, like hard data, and more like emotional data that we are seeking for that.
I think what that brings to mind for me when we talk about emotional data is building in self-trust to design, you know, so like not just trust between people, but also trust of self, and sort of like empowering people to realize that like the way that they are feeling can help other people. And so like it's important for you not only to feel how you feel, but to say how you feel, and that how that can directly serve the community, both as like a warning, but also as a way to grow, you know, as a way to begin change.
Yes, totally.
We have touched on so many topics, and I have a few other questions, but I feel like I really want to highlight some things that have felt really resonant for me. You know, talking about this role of trust, talking about the importance of community-derived knowledge, and for communities to be able to have the tools and structure to collect data themselves, to organize themselves, to transfer and share this data. You mentioned that data can be distributed at the protests, which can provide, again, literally life-saving information to community members when that is facilitated, which, you know, happens so infrequently. I also want to open it up for others who are listening in on the conversation. If you have things that have been brought up in the conversation so far that have been particularly resonant for you, if there's anything you want to speak on that you've observed, either things that are happening here in Seattle that, you know, Valeria's experience is reminding you of, or if there's more questions that you have about the work that she's doing.
Sorry, just jumping back in here. I was trying to type out my question, but I was having trouble sort of like putting the words together. So I was hoping maybe if I say it out loud, that might help. But I was wondering, I feel like technology often is sort of dichotomized between sort of social and sort of human tools. So sort of thinking like technology is like robotic, inorganic, you know, not really real, versus sort of like human qualities or like human services. And so I kind of just want to expand that thought on if you think this sort of disconnection is harmful in a way, and sort of how we can build better technologies that address sort of both, address that issue. And that was kind of a rough question, so feel free to ask me more clarifying questions.
So, well, I think that in this kind of social technologies, we sometimes see like social media is a tool, but for example, what we do in the workshops, well, I consider that as a social technologies, like all these kind of methods or ways in order to open the environment in a vulnerable way or in a safe space is kind of it's my personal social technology that I used, and also making this environment. For example, I have this idea of that take the ritual thing like a ceremony as an immersive architecture to make us feel the community in our bodies. I think that is the most powerful thing that we can experience in the jacalares, for example, and not only in the jacalares. I think that is something that happens when in the societies that are that have these practices like to healing in a collective way. And I think that it's really powerful because you can really connect with another people that has the same issues in their lives, and you suddenly are aware of that you are not alone. Your voice is not alone. Your voice is one of the bunch of the voices that in togetherness are like really fierce. In a fierce togetherness. So I think that in that kind of social technology, it happens this kind of magic thing that I call synchronicity, where everybody are aligned and has and are like really committed with the purpose, like with the cause of the movement, for example.
I have a follow-up question for that, because in my practice, discipline, and background, I come more from a social sciences background, embodied research, things like that, and everything that you're saying really resonates with me, makes a lot of sense, is very true to a lot of the research that I've seen. But I'm curious about, since you are coming at this from an industrial design background and more of a product and material design background, how is this the same or different from kind of your training or your lineage?
Well, it's a good question, but I would say that it's different because in industrial design, I think that the process are like more focused on getting this product or this service, but I don't know if it's that I'm a Libra person that is really interested in how we can get this justice. And sometimes I hear these comments about that the social thing is not important, we have to focus on that. But I would say that in my university we have this we are focused on society, so everything has to be justified with like ask to the society what they give us to us in the education. So I think that is like a mix to do that. And I would say that it's not that different because in design we are always like searching this symbolic thing that has really that gets this impact to the people that for who we are designing. And we have to do this process to abstract the ideas and then communicate them in something like objects or like in some graphic work or in architecture. But nowadays, I think that we are expanding to how we communicate through relationships, in order to solve these complex problems of the society.
Yeah, I think, you know, here in Seattle, we are a very designy place. You know, we have a lot of software designers here. We have a lot of engineers. We have a lot of, you know, this is kind of bringing me back to some of Tyler's question about this idea of the mechanical and the idea of the social as kind of diametrically opposed. And so I'm always interested in areas like the space where you're working that brings more intersection between them, or identifies what are the ways that have been useful in the kind of like design thinking world that we can transfer and translate over to these complex social issues. Exactly what you do.
Yes, and also I will say that in order to solve these complex problems, we have to be clear that these problems are not isolated. So we have to focus on the people, but also in the context, like to have this view of the ecosystem, and then take some choices in order to make the actions that lead us to a design project, for example.
Mm-hmm. Oh, am I? Okay, I'm not on mute. I thought I was on mute. Yeah, I think we see that a lot in sustainability work as well. And this is where we get into systems thinking and looking
Yes.
at kind of how kind of the like isolated practice, or what's the word that I'm looking for? Silos of practice have not only not served us, have been really inefficient, but have in fact like perpetuated or reinforced kind of problematic issues with our society or with whatever it is that a project might be trying to solve or address. I want to ask, so you've just touched on it, I think, by saying like we need to understand that these problems are not isolated, but I want to ask, what kinds of questions do you think it's important for designers or individuals to have at the front of their mind to ask themselves or their communities as they seek to solve complex problems?
Okay. Well, I think that designers should be conscious about their choices, but because that choices will impact in the future, not just for them, but for the society. And also, I think that now is time to explore these complex words, for example, trust, through design, because I think that trust is a crucial element to accept and enjoy the coexistence in our community. And also to hear your inner voice, right? Because sometimes you will know that designed certain things will be bad or have a bad impact in the society. So you have to be clear with your beliefs.
Yes, and I would imagine too that particularly when we see, you know, design as often a really homogenous field, very white dominated, very male dominated, to be clear with your beliefs and with your values and with your position. But I think if you are not part of that majority group, being really clear in your voice, position, impulse, and instincts, and being able to confidently pursue those and follow those. Because again, I think, you know, those are the kinds of things that are going to lead us to really feel the gaps that we're finding.
Yes.
This is such a wonderful conversation. I'm noticing just our times that we're probably going to start wrapping up shortly. But I just wanted to open it up and offer again, if anyone had more questions, or Valeria, if you have any plugs, anything that you're working on that you're super excited about, we'd love to hear specifically what you're doing, where we can find more on what you're doing, if you have more things you'd like to point to, before we start wrapping up for the day.
Yes. Well, I will do a second version of Hakalare, but in a virtual way. So I will have it in Instagram. So we are starting to talk about how we can imagine our presence in the public space, but in a different way that we are now. And also, the girls asked me to teach them something about tarot. So we are exploring that thing too. In order to create this environment of magic, it's not just like something fun, but it's like something that letting us connecting with each other. So, and that is my project for now.
That's awesome.
That sounds really exciting.
Yes, Sergio agreed. I had posted, and Una has posted as well, Valeria's Instagram, Facebook, and website. So follow those for updates on the Hakalera and the tarot reading. Maybe we can find another opportunity to do some partner events on that. I have an eco tarot deck that I really like using that looks at not only our kind of identity and our position in the world, but also our position in proximity to and in context to the environment. And Una is an experienced reader as well. We're also going to post here for social technology, which I think is related a lot to our conversation. So I'll share that with the group. And we would love to just like keep in touch, keep the conversation going. Let's do another plug for our surveys, for our own community data collection and community.
Yes. Yeah, so it's been really exciting also to hear you speak on this, and many people know this, but just also for our archive, this is really exciting. This is what we're moving into and verging into, even this week, starting to use a free technology to figure out how we can map the info that we have. So it's exciting. It's exciting to hear about people around the world who are working on that. So I'm posting our quiz, our S2 on air, that's specifically for today. And then I will also post our prompt that will last for 2 weeks, and our ongoing community response that's like our local census. So those are in the chat. Please pop over. Feel free, even if you're not local, to look at them and see what kind of info we're collecting. Ask us if you have questions, if you have suggestions, if you see problems. Always open to it. Yeah, great.
And I am just going to add in one last resource, which is an S2 fundraiser that we have running now for some of our colleagues who are Black environmental leaders. So just going to share that. That's an ongoing thing that we're doing, a call for support. And we'll include all these links. Like Tyler mentioned, this is recorded. And, oh, cool, thank you. Valeria just posted the hack, a hack link as well. This is recorded, and so we'll post it back up, and we'll include all these links with that as well, so that people can engage with us through time travel as well in the future. In the past. Thank you so much for joining us. Are there any other kind of last thoughts you want to share with us, or anything else you want to bring up to the group?
Well, just thank you for inviting me here.
It's been great. I bet we could have a lot more work that we could do together in collaboration. I feel like there's so many great roots to what you're doing that aligns, I think, for S2 from a participatory research perspective, and the questions that we have about what does it really mean to have a truly resilient, safe, and space to live. And, you know, I think maybe introducing to our vocabulary a space that has agency and communities that have agency.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here, Valeria. Thank you so much. It was so great to hear about your work. We'll post more on it. Stay in touch. I'm so excited to see where things go. Okay. Be well, everybody. Take care. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.